Welcome to the Brandy Show, Conversations with. The idea for this type of show came from the very concept of podcasts. They're available to anyone at any time since they stay posted on the internet portal indefinitely. Podcasts that are time sensitive, that deal with issues of the day are fine, but after a month or so, they can be out of date. Taking advantage of the technology, it made sense to me to create a program podcast that would last. It's as current the day it is posted to 6 months or a year from now. So I hope you like our series Conversations with. Thanks for stopping by. Today's conversation is with John and Peter Ginopolis. For over 40 years, these brothers have run a restaurant/gathering place that has become a go-to destination for athletes, celebrities, and thousands of Michigan residents. It's called Ginopolis. The corner of Middlebelt and 12 Mile Road has been home since 1982. Sadly, in 2019, John and Peter are closing the doors. The business has changed. They're getting older, and they've had their run. But oh my, what stories of Detroit have originated within the walls of Ginopolis. I mean, let's be honest. Wouldn't you be interested to know how the pictures of Elizabeth Taylor, Bob Hope, Muhammad Ali, Telly Savalas, Frank Sinatra, Sparky Anderson, Chuck Daly, Jack Morris, and Wayne Gretzky, and countless others adorn the walls of this place in Farmington Hills, Michigan? Well, let's find out. Here's my conversation with John and Peter Ginopolis. After 40 years, the Ginopolis restaurant, on the grill, whatever you guys call this place, you're done. John and Peter Ginopolis. John, what made the decision for you guys to kind of call it quits?
Well, it's bittersweet, Jimmy. I don't know. It's, I'm 77. Things have changed. I mean, it's just completely different. The restaurant business for me is completely different than it was back in the day when we all remember it. But I think there's a time for everybody to call it quits. And for me, it was time. We had a great fun here. We had a lot of fun here. We met so many wonderful, wonderful people that without the restaurant business, we would have never have met. I mean, we got a list of them, and you know the list of people. And without this business, we'd have never met those people.
Peter, did you and Johnny know the restaurant business was going to be my career when you were young?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to do this my whole life. And I think Johnny the same way because he was raised in it. I went to work at Ford Motor Car Company. I worked there. I worked for the Illages when they had 6 Little Caesars, making pizzas and delivering.
And now they got like 10 million of them. When did you guys get this location at 12 Mile and Middlebelt?
I think it was 1978 is when we looked at it. We bought it. It was, in 78, because we had a place on Telegraph and Schoolcraft that we bought in 1967. And before that, I was at the Topper Restaurant in Dearborn, which is a big Ford Motor hangout there. And in 67, Detroit News had a Detroit favorite bartender contest. And it turned into a 4-week deal. And it turned out to be a big thing. And I happened to slip in, and I won it. So
you were on J.P. McCarthy's Focus as the world's greatest bartender? Is that the deal?
Favorite bartender. I was J.P. McCarthy had me on his Focus show. I was on the Bill Kennedy show. Remember Bill Kennedy?
Names from the past.
Yep, I was on his show, and it was a lot of fun. And that kind of spearheaded our career in the restaurant business. From there, we bought the place on Telegraph.
And Peter, when did you come into the fold, as it were, as a full-blown, okay, we're running this thing together?
Well, in 1967, when we bought, called Capreros at the time, we named it Ginopolis Capreros. But I came in there right then, and somebody asked me if they could have a Labatt's. I asked them, how do you mix a Labatt's? That's how much I knew about the bar business.
Well, that's why you didn't get to be the world's most favorite bartender.
You got that one right. I left that for my brother.
When did you guys and why did you guys say Detroit was going to be our spot? It was because it was hometown? I mean, because let's face it, Detroit in the middle 60s, riots, things weren't exactly wonderful around here, Peter.
Yeah, well, I was in the National Guard, so I saw it, from firsthand. And no, we were out in the suburbs, which was a little different, and we just worked hard and at our restaurant on Telegraph there in Redford, and the rest is history.
Well, he says we're in the suburbs, and we were in Redford on Telegraph, and the property behind us, the garages of the houses behind us, were in Redford, and the homes were in Detroit. And they called that whole neighborhood back there Copper Canyon. That's where all the police lived, because that's the furthest point in Detroit that they could live. And they had to live in Detroit back then, the fire and the police. So that was called Copper Canyon. So we were basically on the edge of Detroit.
When did the theme of this restaurant come together? Because if you look at the theme, and there are celebrities all over the wall, great national celebrities, sports stars. Did you guys head in that direction? Is that the way you wanted this restaurant bar to go?
No, you know what? I started hanging out at a lot of single places, and I got to meet a lot of them. And when we opened up this place, they came over. We had the little house on the corner here. It was Oba's at the time. And I was working it, and, a lot of the hockey players, football players, and that, I would hang out in the restaurant or the other bars, put it that way. The single scene was in then. And we just had a lot of fun, and they came in, and it just developed to be a hot spot. Even the little place was a hot spot. And then we built this place, and that was the start of it, put it that way.
What was it like, John, you old married man that you are, to have the Playboy magazine say, this Ginopolis restaurant is the single spot to be? I mean, that had to be high cotton indeed.
Very simple. Very simple. I worked days. I was out of here. Back then, your night business did not start till like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Well, I was here all day, and I was home already. I was in bed at 10 o'clock at night. And Pete was working the night shift. He was here with all the swingers and shooters and all that. And I was home.
You know what? There are those of us out there who might say, that's an excuse. Nice try.
Hey, listen, let me tell you. 54 years I've been married. Yeah. 54. My 25th wedding anniversary, I took my wife to Greece. For her 50th, I went and picked her up.
That's a great story. So Peter, you are the nighttime guy. You should get the credit rather for being the best singles bar in Detroit.
Well, I'll tell you one thing right now. I told Sparky Anderson, I said, Sparky, I'm the one that created the World Series in '84. You know that.
How did you do that?
Sparky looked at me and said, what? I said, your players were in my place every night drinking Metaxa with me. So when they went on the field, they were loaded. They were loaded ready to go and hit them home runs like they did.
You guys have done such a great job of building this business, but the names are legendary. They're iconic that have come in here, and you have rubbed shoulders with some amazing people. The world of entertainment, let's just go there. Telly Savalas. Johnny, how did Telly Savalas come about?
Telly Savalas, well, I met Telly Savalas. First of all, we met him in Vegas, and then I used to play in a golf tournament in Palm Springs called the Hellenic Golf Classic. And Telly Savalas and then they changed the name to the Telly Savalas Golf Tournament. And I got to know Telly Savalas pretty well in Palm Springs, played golf with him. I still have a $20 bill signed by him, which aggravated the hell out of him. I mean, no, I'm serious.
Did it?
Yeah. I out-snookered him. But he was a great guy. In fact, my dad and my brother and I were in Vegas one night, and he was there, and he was very cordial to my father. And and then I got to know him after that. But he was a great guy. Great guy.
Talk about entertainment, and then there's Bob Hope, and then there's Elizabeth Taylor. How does Bob Hope and Elizabeth Taylor get their pictures on the wall of a restaurant bar in Farmington Hills, Michigan? Would you explain that one to me, Peter?
Well, Johnny's uncle, Ted Gregory from
Marion's uncle.
Marion's uncle, from Cincinnati, was very close friends with Bob Hope. So when Bob came in, he said, there's only one place you got to go, and that's at Ginopolis's. And that's how Bob got here. And Elizabeth Taylor, there was a, Marie.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was a limo driver, and Elizabeth Taylor said, I want some ribs. She says, there's only one place for ribs at Ginopolis's. And that's how she came here.
When these celebrities started coming here, did you guys kind of look at yourself and go, whoa, what's going on here all of a sudden, huh?
Well, like with Bob Hope, I remember my uncle calling me up. He said, Bob Hope's coming to Detroit. He's landing this afternoon. He says, I want you to go there, and I want you to, tell him you're my nephew and all this stuff, and tell him you come in the restaurant that night. And I says, Uncle Ted, I can't do it. How am I going to go there to Bob Hope? And I'm just a little saloon keeper here. He says, well, if you can't handle it, I'm flying in. He flew in, and Bob Hope was playing at the Premier Center on the east side. And sure as hell, man, we went into the dressing room, and Bob Hope and my uncle, he was very, very close with him. He was not an acquaintance. He was very close with him. And after the show, got him in a limo, brought him all the way back here, and he was out on the dance floor dancing up a storm and having a great time. And he was here 3 times after that. He was there with his wife, Dolores, and he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it.
Working nights, Peter, you got to probably see more of this than maybe Johnny did. At least Johnny alludes to that.
Do I have to tell you everything?
You don't have to tell me everything, but give me the juicy stuff. This is podcast, so it's kind of like cable.
I'm going to tell you something. I really had good experience with a lot of them. I mean, it was so exciting. They'd walk in, and you asked my brother, how did it feel meeting a celebrity? You know what? Most of them were very down to earth. And we became friends with a lot of them after they left here. And we kept in contact with them.
One of the guys that was like that, and I know I heard Johnny talk about it, was Sinatra. Sinatra, John, you talk about, what am I doing out here in Palm Springs, and I'm hanging out in Frank Sinatra's house?
What happened? First, how we met Sinatra is through Jilly Rizzo. Pete became good friends with Jilly Rizzo, who was Sinatra. Nothing got to Sinatra without going through Jilly. Okay, so Sinatra came to town, and we were hanging out with Jilly and that, and we were at Pine Knob. I remember this. We're sitting in a seat, and Gus Pantelli went up to Pete, and he says, the old man wants to go out to dinner. So where do we take him? Well, back then we didn't have a place here, so we took him to another restaurant. And so I can't think of the name of it right now. And anyways, we took him there, and from that point on, we were kind of in the thing. And then Sinatra, he came to town. He had our ribs. And I was in Palm Springs one time, and Gus got a call from Pat Henry.
Oh, yeah.
Pat Henry was a comedian that opened up the shows for him. So he said, I'm having a barbecue at the house, this and that. So he said, you want to come by? And so he told him I was in town. He said, well, bring him with him. So we went over to the house. We had a barbecue. And Harry Gardino was there. Now, Harry Gardino, a lot of people don't know who he is by name.
He's one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, he was the lieutenant in Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
That's where everybody remembers him by. So we went over to the house, and Jilly Rizzo was there, Pat Henry, Harry Gardino. Who was the snake?
Oh, Joe Bonita.
Al
Bonita
was there. So we're sitting, we had a barbecue this. So Harry Gardino says to Pat Henry, he says, call the old man up and see if he'll come have a drink with his pallies. He says he probably won't because I'm going to use the word henpecked. That wasn't the term he used, but I'm going to use the word henpecked. PWRD are the initials. So they call him up on the phone, and they're talking, you, PW, son of a bitch. I mean, if you got any balls at all, you'll come over here and have a drink with your old pals and this and that. And I'm sitting there like, man, they're talking to the man like this, right?
And he was the man.
Oh, he was. Of course he was. And up the phone. 20 minutes later, who comes walking through the door screaming and yelling, I'll show you PW and this and that, and better go back and forth. Stayed there. He had a couple blackjacks on the rocks, and I'm sitting there on the couch like a little mummy saying, nobody's going to believe this. I mean, here I am, and I'm sitting here, and nobody's going to believe this story. I said, can't take a picture. You take a picture, forget it, you're done. With that crowd.
Yeah.
And that was it. That had a few drinks, left, and that was it.
And I would imagine that they appreciated the fact that you understood. You didn't take pictures, and what was said there never got anywhere else. That's what I would imagine they appreciated from you guys.
Right, absolutely. I mean, we knew when to keep our mouths shut. I mean, we've seen so much go on, and Pete could tell you a lot of stories, but, that's why they had trust in us. They had trust in us.
And that's what got him back here. And Pete, John says that Jilly was Sinatra's guy. Sinatra had the reputation of having an entourage, or he was buffered by a number of people. How difficult was it to get to Old Blue Eyes?
Well, after we met him through our cousin Gus Pantel, after we met him, then we became good friends with Jilly. And Jilly was Sinatra's right-hand guy. One day I'm in Palm Springs, or Palm Desert. We had a house out there. And Jilly calls me up one afternoon, and he said, hey, Pete, what are you doing this evening? And I said, well, I don't have anything planned. Now, wait a minute, you got to hear this. I didn't have anything planned. He says, well, then the old man wants to know if you want to join us for dinner. What do you think?
The old man, that's Sinatra. I'm accepting that one.
You know what I told him? Yeah, you know what? Let me check and see if I'm available.
You didn't.
No, I didn't, but it sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah. No, but he actually called up and asked if I wanted to have dinner with Frank, and I said, you got it. I'll be there.
And people talk.
I'll pick up the tab.
But the other thing is that you talk about that in that setting, he was just the normal guy. The legend of Sinatra, if you will, is not necessarily the real Sinatra, is it?
One time we're out having dinner, okay? There's like 4 or 5 of us at the table. So we're all telling stories, and I'm going to tell you what kind of guy he was. He listened. I mean, you couldn't top his stories if you had one. Well, I was telling a story, and he stopped me right at the beginning, and he says, Pete, I'm going to tell you right now, don't leave one little bit out of that story because I want to hear it all. And he kept saying, then what happened? Then what happened?
That had to be so much. I was going to say, I knew you were going to tell me the story, but that had to be so much fun for you.
Oh, he was like one of the guys. I mean, we were like with him being one of the guys. I mean, you got the legend there, and he didn't make you feel like that. He was very comfortable. But you know what? It comes with how you meet a person and then how they accept you. Well, like Johnny was saying, we had trust, and that went a long way with everybody.
Of all of those celebrity types that come in, we'll get to the sports guys later, how you shepherded the Detroit Pistons to NBA championships. But of all those celebrity Hollywood types, does one stick out as being one of those people that you go, that guy, I'm glad that he chose us to, or she chose us to be a friend and be a part of this? Well,
you know what? There's more than one, but I think you're talking about athletes. Muhammad Ali was just absolutely unbelievable in here. I mean, he would go around and shake hands with everybody before they even came up to the table. The babies, he would hug them and kiss the babies and that. He was just fantastic.
How did you get to meet Muhammad?
Well, Tom Sluter, who was his agent at the time, was good friends of ours. And he said, I'm getting him confused already. Muhammad Ali was coming in town, and so he came here for dinner. And what a genuine, I told every athlete that there's one guy you patron yourself after, and you know who that is? Muhammad Ali. He don't refuse an autograph. He did not refuse an autograph. He was in here one evening. He was getting ready to leave, and somebody asked him for an autograph. He wound up sitting at the back table. We had at least 300 or 400 people in here. There was a line for him to sign autograph. He signed everybody an autograph that wanted one. And before he left, he said, Pete, he said, does everybody have an autograph that has one? Because I'm getting ready to leave. That's the kind of class he was.
He was bigger than life, and yet he was also one of the most gracious guys I think I've ever met.
Well, he was, and I'll tell you what happened. One night he was in here on a Saturday night, and the Detroit Pistons were playing the Bulls in a playoff game on Sunday. Now, we had season tickets, front row behind the visitors' bench. So we sitting at the table with them throughout the night and this and that. And so finally, I don't know what made me even ask him. I says, would you like to go to the Pistons game tomorrow? They're playing the Bulls. He said, yeah.
Now, did you know what you were getting into? You're going to walk into a game with Muhammad Ali.
You got to be shitting me, man. I said, he said yes, right? So I tell Pete, I said, Pete, he's going to the game with us, man. So we picked him up at the hotel, and this Tom Sluter was there with us. And it wouldn't have really happened, without Tom Sluter. But it happened, and now we're all together. We took him in the limo.
Well, tell me what Chuck said first at that dinner. He said, you're coming to the game tomorrow. Make sure you guys come in early before the game. Now, you don't go in the locker room before a game. Period.
This was Chuck Daly?
Yeah. This was a playoff game.
Okay.
This is playoff, Chicago Bulls. So Pete's right. So there, I took him. We went in the locker room. I mean, I'm telling you right now, Isaiah Thomas, John Sally, everyone stood at attention. Dennis Rodman, Vinnie John. They couldn't believe it. Muhammad Ali was there. I mean, it was a big thrill to them. And he pulled one of these levitating tricks that he does, where you think he's off of the ground. And I'm telling you something. I mean, it looked like he was off the ground. Make a long story short, these guys absolutely went nuts when they saw him. He introduced all the Pistons and everything, and we came back, went to the seats. It wasn't 5 minutes, and everybody in the arena realizes that Muhammad Ali is at the game. It was pandemonium. I mean, they had to get security guards. Everybody was over there. And they just had to keep the crowds away, and like Pete said, I mean, he already had a bunch of autographs signed. All he had to do is just pull them out of his pocket. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He signed them before he even got to the game. And he was so great at the game. He was so cordial to everybody. And in the car on the way home, he was telling jokes. And he was still, his speech was a little slow and everything. But he was fantastic.
You talked about Sparky a little bit earlier, and you talked about Muhammad Ali and the Pistons. Chuck Daly comes to mind. As Chuck was a regular, almost a family member here at Ginopolis. What a great guy. And again, another normal, everyday guy that turns out to be extraordinary as a coach. Peter, tell us a little bit about Chuck Daly and the kind of guy he was and why Ginopolis kind of fit right into his wheelhouse.
Well, Chuck, I think I was one of the first ones to meet Chuck. Stan Novick, remember Stan? He was a scout for the Pistons. Well, Stan brought him in from the airport, and they came in the front door, and they sit down at the stand-up bar in the bar, and Stan introduced me to the new coach of the Pistons, right? So we're talking back and forth, and Chuck says, well, where's a good place to buy a house around here and this and that? We're going back and forth. And I said, hey, Chuck, I said, you want to buy my house? I put him in my car. We went to my house, showed him he didn't buy it, but I took him to my house, came back. The first time I met him, and he became close friends of ours ever since. And Johnny became real close with Chuck as well.
Well, John, you used to say that he would come in every day, have a bowl of soup at the end of the bar, and you're working the day crowd, and you and Chuck were like every day. He was like Norm at Cheers.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he would. Yeah, he was. He'd come in every day and have his golf shoes on because he always wanted to go hit some balls. He'd say, come on, let's go to the club, because he was a member at Western, where I've been a member for 47 years. But he'd say, let's go to the club and hit some balls. Let's go this and that. And he was just, he was a regular here. And Chuck was just, he used to be at my house for Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving dinners. He was there all the time. He was part of the family. In fact, I got to tell you a story. One of the holidays, I don't know which one, but Alan Trammell and Jack Morris are at the house, and remember a guy by the name of Alex Grammas? He was the third base.
Third base for Sparky.
And Alex Grammas was at the house, and Chuck Daly was there with the family and that. And my son, I don't know how it happened, but they played a little basketball game in a driveway. So it was Alan Trammell, Jack Morris, my son, and one of my nephews. And I mean, they're playing, okay? I mean, they're not playing horse, okay? They're playing. Chuck Daly looks out there and he says, I don't even believe this. He says, if Sparky Anderson saw them on the asphalt playing basketball, and this was during the baseball season. I mean, it was just unbelievable. But we'd always have those kind of people at the house all the time. I mean, they were there for holiday dinners and everything. I mean, it was great.
You told me a story about Chuck taking you to a playoff game in Boston, and it happened to be a pretty important playoff game, and his reaction to the events of that night really said a lot about his character. Tell me that story, John.
Well, I'll tell you, I called him up in the morning. I remember it vividly. And I just wanted to call him up and congratulate him and wish him good luck and all that. So he says to me, he says, why don't you come to the game? I said, you're coming home after the game, yeah? He said, yeah. I said, well, I don't want to stay overnight in Boston by myself, this and that. He says, you get to the game, he says, and you fly home with us. So I said, well, get me the passes. I said, let me call up the airlines. I got a ticket. I called them back. I says, I'm going to the airport. I says, have the press pass and all that stuff waiting for me at will call. So somebody drove me to the airport. I mean, this was all in a spur of the moment. I never called my wife, nothing. I got on the plane, flew to Boston, went to will call, picked up he had the press pass there. Now, you know what it is with a press pass. I mean, there's nowhere you can't go with a press pass. And, I mean, I'm walking on the parquet floor and everything and all this. And
feeling pretty good about yourself.
Oh, I am. I said, look at me. So then Dennis Johnson. Remember Dennis Johnson from the Boston Celtics? He came out on the court, and he saw me. And when he was in Detroit, my seats are behind the visitors' bench. We used to harass them. And he looked at me like, oh, no. He says, you're in my house now. And I says, oh, my God, am I in trouble, man? But he was very, very cordial. Make a long story, I was sitting next to Tommy Hearns. And we're at the game, and that's the game where Isaiah threw the ball away.
Larry Bird intercepted the pass.
Gave it to Dennis Johnson, and he put it up for layup with like 3 seconds to go. We lost the game in the final seconds. It was just absolutely terrible. So I went in the back there, and I didn't go in the locker room. This was the first time I wouldn't go in the locker because there's no way. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm a smart little Greek boy that knows you don't go in the locker room of a team that loses a game like that. And that was an important game. So I'm waiting outside for them to come out. So about 45 minutes later, they came out of the locker room, and we walked on the bus, the team bus, which was parked inside the Boston Gardens. And we pulled out, and as we pulled out, I mean, I'll bet you there had to have been 200 people out there. Pistons, Lambeer, you suck. Pistons suck. I mean, they were throwing shit at the bus and everything. And so finally, we pulled out, got to the airport, got on a plane. Now, Pistons didn't own a plane back then. This was chartered. So we got on the plane. I turned to Dick Versace and Ronnie Rusty. I'll never forget it. I said, I'm sitting next to you guys. So I was just getting in a row, and Chuck was walking by. Now, Chuck has never said a word to me. We walked by, and he looked at me. He said, sit over here with me. So that's the last place I really wanted to be, honest to God. I just didn't want to. It was horrible. I mean, the mood was just terrible. So I sat down in a window seat, and he sat on the aisle seat. Never said anything. So finally, during the flight, Isaiah came over. And he says, Coach, he says, something to this effect. I should have called a timeout or to that effect. And Chuck says, you know what you should have done. I know. It's over with. Forget about it. It's done. We landed the plane in Detroit. We got in a car. He had to drive me back to my car because I didn't have a car. And he drove me back, and he never said a word till we got to 275. And he says, you know what? I hope we learn by this. And that was it. I mean, that was it. He just didn't talk about it, nothing. And we got here, and we each got in our car and went home. And, I mean, I think I took it, well, he took it bad. But after he told me probably that was the greatest thing that happened to them. That made them the team that they were the following year.
That won them championships. One mistake. Peter, athletes, we just talked about Isaiah. The guys that came in here, particularly the guys like a Rodman or a Mahorn, they have bigger than life images. What were they like in a social setting?
Oh, they loved to dance. They got on their dance floor and they showed their stuff off. I mean, when they came in here, it was really unique because when they came in this place, Ginopolis's, they knew that they weren't going to be harassed. And that's why we created a great reputation that the celebrities can come in here and not be bothered or harassed.
The key word here, I think, is what we talked about before, trust.
Oh, yeah. We gained their trust. One day, Johnny will love this one, from the L.A. Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda is sitting in the booth, right? And he's sitting there and, the place is packed and everything. He calls me over. He says, hey, Pete, he says, what's going on around here? He says, nobody's coming up to me. And I says, what do you mean? He says, well, I want people to, nobody knows I'm here. Tell the DJ to announce that I'm here. I said, we're trying to keep, people are respecting him and staying away. Meanwhile, what happens? He had me go tell the DJ, listen, Tommy Lasorda is here, and if you want to say hello to him, go on over and say hello to him. And he had the crowd around him. But that's the way the place was.
Is there a night that you guys remember in here, or a day or something after a championship, or that kind of stands out? I know the old Lindell downtown, they talk about when the Tigers won the series in '68, that the team came in and basically tended bar and gave away. Jimmy Buccicaris said, I never lost so much money and had so much fun in my life on that day when Al Kaline and Norm Cash were behind the bar, basically giving people drinks because of this championship. Was there ever a night like that here at Ginopolis, or a day?
Well, the '84 championship game, Pete and I were in the locker room.
The '84 World Series championship.
Yeah, the World Championship. We were in the locker room, and then we came back here, and a bunch of them came back here. I think it was Tram was here. Yeah, they all came back here. And it was just very, how exciting. I mean, my God, it's just something that, just to be in the locker room. I mean, these are things, by being in the business that we're in, the restaurant business, these are the things that you would never have done as a, I don't know, normal person, but as a regular person. I mean, my God, we've had so many different exciting experiences.
Do you remember that time too? Was that the same day or same night you would pick?
We were together, and when we came back here, I mean, it was terrific. I mean, having the '84 World Series after they won it, when they were burning Detroit down with the cars turning over and everything, they were all here, and the customers all respected, and the place was jammed. I mean, it was. You can't express the feeling being in the locker room when they win the World Series, as you know.
Yeah, you've been there, so you know the excitement now. And I'll tell you the other thing, we had the New York Yankees brought the whole team, the team bus pulled up into the parking lot and brought the whole Yankee team in here on a Friday or Saturday night, I think it was. I mean, the whole team was here. We got pictures of 4 Hall of Famers from that team. I mean, Ricky Henderson, Goose Gossage, Dave Winfield, Mattingly. I mean, they're all, they were all here. The whole team was here.
How did they know about Ginopolis? They're from New York. They're the Bronx.
Well, I think probably they knew about it from the Tigers. You know what I mean? They talk, and they probably said, there's a good place out there, and the whole team brought him in there. But like when Tommy Lasorda came to town, I had a very close friend of mine said, "Would you do me a favor?" He was in for the World Series. "Would you pick up this friend of mine, Eddie Menasian?" Eddie was a general manager of one of the big hotels in Chicago. I said, "Sure." So I went to the airport, parked the car. I went into where I was supposed to pick him up, and he came up to me. "Are you John?" "Yeah, Eddie Menasian." He says, "Can you wait a few minutes?" He says, "I got a friend of mine that's coming in from L.A." He says, "Can you wait a while?" I said, "Well, of course. It's Tommy Lasorda." I mean, that's how things happen. So I drove him downtown. They were staying at the Renaissance downtown, and that's, he said, "I'm going to come by the restaurant," and all that. That's how it happened.
Any Red Wings stories? I mean, because we've gone through the Pistons and the Tigers. Any Lions and Red Wings stories? I'm sure that they're all there.
Eddie Meal, you remember MIO? Yeah. Anyways, MIO comes in here with Wayne Gretzky, Paul Coffey, and there another one after one of the games. And we're sitting at the bar. It's pretty close to like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So, I was drinking Metoxy.
It couldn't have been that long. It couldn't have been that late because I was in the picture. I was here. So it couldn't have been that late.
No, it was. He happened to stay over on my shift.
Or I came back.
So now Eddie's got him, they're all here and that. So I was drinking Metoxy at the time. And, Wayne does not drink hard stuff. He was a beer drinker. Anyways, he started drinking the Metoxy. I mean, that's all we drank. We were so lit. I got a picture of us out there. I mean, we were just hammered. And he was supposed to come back the next day. He didn't because he was a hangover. Then that night, or the next day, they had the afternoon game with the Red Wings. Well, you know what Wayne did? A hat trick.
Of course.
Yeah, on my Metoxa, like I told you about the Tigers.
Same thing with some of the other times these stories go. A guy comes off a big hangover and has a great day. One of your friends and one of the guys with the old Lions, you talked about Joe Schmidt. A delightful, great guy.
Love him. Love Joe Schmidt. He's just absolutely, without a doubt, one of the classiest people you'll ever meet in your life.
Talk about a storyteller. He has stories from the way begone days when the NFL wasn't the NFL like we know it today.
Yeah, well, one story I remember Joe telling. I knew Joe when I was a busboy at the Topper, okay? He would come in with Nick Petrosani and Terry Barr. And, I just looked up at these guys. I was a kid, 16, 17 years old, and I wow, I couldn't believe it. But he tells me a great story about when they traded Bobby Lane to Pittsburgh. And the following year, Joe was playing for the East or the West, and Bobby Lane was playing for the opposite seed in the Pro Bowl. Night before the game, Joe and Bobby Lane go out to dinner, and this is on Saturday night. Sunday, it's Joe's birthday. So they're kind of celebrating Saturday night. So Sunday comes around, they're playing in a game, and Joe Schmidt's playing defense, obviously, and Bobby Lane goes back, and he throws a pass right at Joe. Right at him. Joe now is almost embarrassed because there's nobody around him, and he catches the ball, and he runs it in for a touchdown. And they're coming back, and Bobby Lane looks at him. He says, "Joe, happy birthday."
That was good.
Those are the stories that's what make this bar and this restaurant and you guys so unique. So tell me, is there any...
I got
okay, you got a Sinatra story? One more Sinatra story, then we'll finish up.
Okay. Well, anyways, we're at Pine Knob, and Sinatra's performing. Well, we're there early, and before it starts, Jilly says to me, "Hey, Pete, let's go over to the restaurant over there at Pine Knob. People used to go there for dinner." So I said, "Yeah, let's go." It's about like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we go there, and we're walking around. These people are having dinner, and Jilly walked over. He knew one of the guys from Miami. He goes, "Hey, Harold, how you doing? What's going on?" You know, and they're with their wives, and they're all having dinner. There's about 6 of them there. And Jilly says, "Coming to the concert after, right?" He says, "Not really. We're just here having dinner." He says, "No, you got to come to the concert." And I says, or he says, "No, you got to come." He says, "Hey, Pete," he says, "you got your tickets?" I says, "Yeah." Now, we had 6 seats, center, third row. So I said, "Yeah." He said, "Give them to me." So I gave him. I'm going to tell Jilly no.
Wait a minute, you're giving your 6 seats center row for Sinatra at Pine Knob, and you're giving them away.
I'm giving them to Jilly's friends, who I happen to know the one father. But anyways, so I give him the tickets. Guess what happens? He says, "I'll take care of you." So we all had backstage passes. So we're backstage at Pine Knob. So the concert's just getting ready to play, right? Guess what happens? Jilly says, "I got you all set." Put 6 chairs right on stage. I'm sitting on stage watching Sinatra 6 feet away from me, winking at me, singing. Now, how good does that get?
It doesn't get any better than that.
I told Jilly, I said, "You can have my tickets anytime you want."
After all these years, give me that last comment, that last thing about this was a pretty good way to go, John. Start with you.
Well, I couldn't, there's no better way. I mean, I just couldn't think of a better life that I've had in the restaurant business, as great of a life that I've had. You know, it's just not the restaurant business, okay? My family was involved in the community and in charities. I mean, my wife, if I was to have a legacy with my family, because other than my family, I don't care, you know, but my legacy to my family is the 2, you know, we have $5 million endowments at Children's Hospital that we raised from golf tournaments and different events for Children's Hospital. To me, that is just as important as, you know, what we've accomplished in the restaurant business, if not more.
It's a people business, and I think that comment right there typifies why you guys have been successful, because it is a people business, isn't it, Peter?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, like Johnny said, you know, the opportunities that we had today can't happen. You know why? Cell phones, picture taking. They weren't around then. Like when we'd go out with Sinatra or any celebrity, by then they would text, you'd have 1,000 people at your door, which is not bad if you're in the restaurant business, but they wouldn't come back then because they had no privacy. Today, the celebrities really don't have privacy they used to have, and that's how they used to come in here, and the excitement that we had and the experiences you can't do anymore. And I tell my kids who are younger, finally they're starting to get the gist of, oh my God, my dad knew them, and that one, you know, and this one. You know, I mean, think about it. You know, to meet Mr. Brandstatter, I mean, as a
you're setting the bar a little low there.
No. That's the thing we haven't even discussed, Brandy.
No,
Brandy, we would have never met people like you and Robbie. And I mean this.
I first met you when you were down on Telegraph Road. That's when we first went in and had a steak down there.
Right. That was, you know, a lot of years ago. Oh. But you know what? I got to tell you, if you got time, a great Rodman story, okay? Yeah. Now, my son and Dennis were very close, and they still talk to each other quite a bit. And that. But about 2 o'clock in the morning, my doorbell rings at the house. And I wake up and I told my wife, you know, I sent her down, go see who's down there, man. No, so I went downstairs and look at the thing there through the window, and it's Dennis and his wife, Annie, and their little baby. I opened the door. I said, Dennis, what's wrong? What's going on? He says, my power went out at my house. I says, your power went out at your house, and you're here on my front porch at 2 o'clock in the morning. I said, Dennis, come on in. So I called my wife down. She came down. We fixed up the spare bedroom up there. and they stayed overnight. But my point is that he thought enough of us to 2 o'clock in the morning. He didn't go to a motel or whatever. He knew that we would take care of him. And that's a compliment.
That
was the AAA, sir.
I was going to say, you know what? That's a great story to finish on, because it's about being somebody's friend. That's what the Ginopolis brand is all about. Thank you guys both very much.
Well, it's a pleasure with you, Jim.
Jimmy, thank you. Love you. You know that.
This was one of my favorite chats. We strolled down memory lane with the Ginopolis brothers, and I'm so glad we did. We never want to lose that connection with our past, that connection with the people that made history, not just in Detroit, but in the country. And a lot of that history had its origins right there at 12 Mile and Middlebelt in Farmington Hills, Michigan, at Ginopolis. Gone now, but boy, never forgotten. Thanks so much, Johnny and Peter Ginopolis. Keep an eye on my Facebook page, Jim Brandstatter 76, and my Twitter account, @Jim Brandstatter, and my website, thebrandyshow.com, for upcoming episodes of Conversations With.